On a cliff in the Pacific, a single man knelt in the dark. Around him lay the wounded and the dying. Bullets cut through the smoke. His friends had already retreated, but this man would not leave. He carried no rifle. He carried no weapon at all. He had never fired a single shot in the war. His own army had once tried to throw him out. They called him a coward. They threw their boots at him while he prayed. An officer threatened to have him court-martialed, all because of one thing he refused to do. He would not touch a gun. Now, on the deadliest ridge of the war, every other soldier was gone, and the wounded were trapped at the top of a 400-foot wall of rock. One unarmed man stayed behind to carry them down. One by one, whispering the same prayer into the dark. "Lord, please, help me get just one more." To understand the man on that cliff, you have to go back to Virginia. Desmond Thomas Doss was born in Lynchburg in 1919. He grew up in a poor, deeply religious family. His mother raised him as a devout Seventh-day Adventist. She taught him to keep Saturday holy and to never eat meat. But one lesson mattered more than all the others. One of the 10 Commandments, "Thou shalt not kill." On the wall of their home hung a framed picture of those commandments. Beside the words was a drawing of Cain standing over his brother Abel. As a boy, Desmond would stare at that picture for hours. He asked himself how one brother could kill another. He decided even then that he never could. Then came a moment that sealed it forever. One day his father and a relative fought, and a gun was drawn. In the chaos, the weapon ended up in young Desmond's hands. He hid it away, his heart pounding, and he swore he would never hold a gun again. It was a promise he would keep for the rest of his life. He grew into a quiet, gentle young man. He took a job at a shipyard in Newport News. He fell in love with a young woman named Dorothy. He was kind, hard-working, and devoted to his faith. Then, far across the world, a war began to burn. In December 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. America was thrown into the Second World War. Young men everywhere were called to fight. Desmond felt that call too, but with a problem no one understood. He wanted to serve his country without ever taking a life. As a shipyard worker, Desmond could have stayed out of the war entirely. He was offered a deferment that would have kept him safely at home, but he turned it down. In 1942, he let himself be drafted into the United States Army. He believed the war was just, and he wanted to do his part. But for Desmond, doing his part meant saving lives, not taking them. He chose to serve as a combat medic. He would walk into battle, but he would never carry a weapon. To the Army, this made no sense at all. From his very first days in training, the trouble began. His sergeant ordered him to pick up a rifle. Desmond refused. He explained his faith and his promise to God. The officers did not care. To them, a soldier who would not hold a gun was useless or a coward. The other men turned on him. They mocked him, cursed him, and called him a coward to his face. At night, as he knelt to pray, they threw their boots at him. He prayed for them anyway, and never raised a hand. He also refused to train on Saturdays, his Sabbath. His commanders tried to get rid of him. They tried to have him discharged as unfit to serve. One officer threatened to have him court-martialed. They ordered him again and again to carry a weapon. Each time, quietly, he refused. But the army could not force him. The law protected his right to serve as a conscientious objector. So they let him go on, certain he would break. They were sure he would never last in real combat. They had no idea what this quiet man was about to become. In 1944, Desmond's unit was sent into the Pacific War. He was a medic with the 77th Infantry Division. Their first taste of battle came on the island of Guam. The fighting was savage in thick jungle and heat. And there, the man they had mocked went to work. As bullets flew, Desmond crawled out to the wounded. Where others took cover, he moved toward the screams. He bandaged, he dragged, he carried men to safety. He did it all with no weapon to defend himself. The same soldiers who threw boots at him now owed him their lives. Slowly, their hatred turned into something else. Respect, and then something close to awe. They began to feel safer when Doss was near. After Guam came the island of Leyte in the Philippines. Again, Desmond braved fire to reach the fallen. Again and again, he risked everything for other men. For his courage, he was awarded 2 bronze stars for valor. The coward they wanted to discharge had become a hero, but the cost of war was creeping into his own body. Somewhere in those jungles, he caught tuberculosis. It would hide in his lungs for years to come. For now, he kept moving, kept saving, kept praying. He still refused to carry a gun, and he never wavered. But the worst was still ahead of him. In the spring of 1945, the Americans turned to Okinawa. It was the last great island before Japan itself. The battle for it would be one of the bloodiest of the entire war. And waiting there was a wall of rock that would test every man alive. The soldiers would come to call it Hacksaw Ridge. For Desmond Doss, it would become the place of his greatest test. Okinawa was a nightmare of mud, rain, and death. In late April 1945, Desmond's regiment reached the Maeda Escarpment. It was a sheer cliff some 400 feet high. The soldiers nicknamed it Hacksaw Ridge. To attack, the men had to climb the cliff face itself. They threw huge cargo nets over the top to scale it. And waiting above was a Japanese army dug deep into the rock. The enemy had carved a maze of tunnels and caves through the ridge. Machine guns, mortars, and snipers covered every inch of the top. American soldiers climbed up into a storm of fire. Many were cut down the moment they reached the summit. The fighting on top was close, brutal, and merciless. Men fell by the dozens in minutes. And through it all, Desmond climbed up with them, unarmed. While others carried rifles, he carried bandages and morphine. He moved through the killing ground, dragging the wounded to cover. He never stopped, even as the bullets found his friends. The ridge changed hands again and again in savage waves. Then came a Japanese counterattack of terrible force. It tore through the American lines on top of the cliff. The order came down, fall back, retreat down the nets. The surviving soldiers scrambled back over the edge. They climbed down the cliff to safety, leaving the summit behind. But the top of the ridge was not empty. Dozens of wounded men lay there, unable to move, bleeding, broken, and stranded in enemy ground. Every able man had gone back down the cliff. Every man but one. Desmond Doss looked at the wounded, and he stayed. Alone, on top of Hacksaw Ridge, surrounded by the enemy. What Desmond did next is almost beyond belief. He refused to leave a single wounded man behind. Alone on the cliff, in range of the enemy, he began to work. He crawled to the nearest wounded soldier. He dragged him to the very edge of the 400-foot drop. And there he used a knot he had taught himself. He tied a special loop around the wounded man. Then he lowered him, hand over hand, down the face of the cliff. Below, astonished soldiers caught him and pulled him to safety. Then Desmond turned around and went back for another. Each time he sent a man down, he prayed, "Lord, please help me get one more." Then he crawled back into the fire to find that one more. Japanese soldiers were all around him in the smoke. At any second, he could have been killed. But he would not stop. He could not stop. One wounded man after another he carried to the edge, lowering each one down alone for hours. His hands were raw and burned from the rope. Still he prayed the same words, just one more. He saved men who had once mocked and cursed him. He never asked who they were. He only saved them. When it was finally over, the cliff top was empty of the living, because he had lured every last one of them to safety. The army would struggle to believe the number. Desmond himself thought he had saved around 50 men. His officers believed it was closer to 100. They settled on the figure of 75. 75 men carried down a cliff by one unarmed soldier in a single day, praying each time for just one more.
The battle for Hacksaw Ridge was not finished with Desmond yet. In the days that followed, he kept saving lives under fire. Then, one night, a grenade landed among him and other soldiers. Desmond tried to kick it away, but it exploded. 17 pieces of shrapnel tore into his body. He was badly wounded, but still he thought of others. He waited 5 hours rather than pull a medic from another man. As he was finally carried out, he saw another wounded soldier. He rolled off his own stretcher and told them to take the other man first. While he waited again, a sniper's bullet shattered his arm. He bound his own broken arm to a rifle stock as a splint. At last, the man who saved so many was carried to safety himself. But in the chaos, he had lost something precious. His small Bible, given to him by his wife, was gone on the battlefield. When his unit heard, they did something extraordinary. The soldiers went back and searched the ruined battlefield for it, and they found his Bible and returned it to him. It was their way of honoring the man who had saved them. News of what Doss had done began to spread. On October the 12th, 1945, he was called to the White House. President Harry Truman placed the Medal of Honor around his neck. He was the first conscientious objector in history to receive it, the highest award for valor, earned without ever firing a shot. But the war had left its mark deep inside him. The tuberculosis in his lungs nearly killed him. He would lose a lung and 5 ribs, and years of his life to it. Yet Desmond Doss never once regretted his choice. He had gone to war to save life, and that is exactly what he did. He died in 2006, the man who proved courage needs no weapon. The coward they mocked, who carried 75 men out of hell, one at a time.